real estate is a tough business. We will share stories here that you won't hear anywhere else. So join us to learn the truth and avoid those costly mistakes.
We're John and Kaylin Sledge, and this is the Think Like an Appraiser podcast, cautionary tales in real estate.
Welcome to the second episode of the Think Like an Appraiser podcast. Today we have Spenser Carpenter from Pennsylvania, and he shares some cautionary tales about a 5-unit rehab project that he did with some partners. And be sure to listen about how he learned about permitting and what they did when their private money note was called in the middle of construction.
Hey, Spenser, thanks for being on the show today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into your cautionary tale?
Sure. I'm 29 years old. I'm based south of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've actually been in the entertainment industry since I was 15. And so I've done a lot in logistics and planning, which gave way to me having a little bit of a partnership in this project, managing the project, because that's just what my expertise has been so far.
Right.
But fairly new to real estate investing. But this is a little bit about what to expect if you getting started.
Great. Well, why don't we jump right into your story?
Sure. So the property we purchased was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. While Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is the capital of Pennsylvania, it is fairly a dead city. Philadelphia is way more lively. There's a lot more going on there. But we liked Harrisburg because it's a city that is not overvalued. It has transportation to major cities, but is also 30 minutes from nature. And so we really thought that between that and just the government providing 70% of the jobs in the area, it was a perfect demographic for young adults and millennials. It's just kind of undiscovered so far. And we had my partner was employed by someone that had 100 units in Harrisburg already. So we were going to use, that person's network to kind of guide us along, teach us along the way. And so we acquired a property. It was a 5-unit. It was originally a single family house, but it was converted into 5 units. And list price for it was $130,000. We realized there was going to be a lot of work, so we put in an offer for $100,000 and settled on $110,000.
Okay.
And we walked through with a real estate agent, property manager, contractor, and they all said it would be a great buy. So we went ahead with it.
So what led you into real estate appraising?
It kind of always interests me, but I have a high functioning special needs brother that is my responsibility.
Okay.
And so I've known, I've recognized since I was probably 9 years old that eventually he would be my responsibility. And, as I got older, got into music, I kind of realized that I'm going into an industry that doesn't pay a whole lot, takes a whole lot to succeed in, but I also need to be prepared to make enough money to cover more than just my future family.
Sure.
So that's kind of my why is
Okay.
it started getting into looking at other investing opportunities and stuff like that. And, I had a little bit of a dabble in affiliate marketing and network marketing and, took the self-improvement side of that very seriously. And real estate just really seemed like, the way to go.
Being new to investing, where'd y'all find the people that you worked with?
Yes, I think my partner found the real estate agent, and then the property manager was his employer's property manager. And so he was already experienced in managing 200 units in the area.
Gotcha.
He brought the general contractor to the table.
Okay.
And so the first real hiccup we had in this whole process was we got the property, and then my partner, his name is Bob. Bob and his employer had a falling out, and it wasn't just he stopped working for him. It was kind of a messy situation, and so we quickly realized, oh man, this could create a conflict of interest with the property manager who's
Sure.
employed by Bob's now former employer, and this happened literally the day of or the day before our final walkthrough with the GC.
Oh, wow.
and the property manager. And so when we got the property, we told them what we wanted to do. Or, I'm sorry, before we got the property, we told them what we wanted to do. They said, sounds pretty doable based on your budget. And then after we got the property, we walked through again, discussed it a little bit more, and it sounded like we were getting to, we were like, their tone had changed a little bit, and it was, you can probably do about 75% of what you want to do with the budget. And we're like, well, all right, that sucks, but it is what it is.
Sure.
And then the falling out happened. We had our final walkthrough, and we were down to doing like 60% of what we wanted to do with the budget. And we were like, we're kind of worried that there's a conflict of interest happening here.
Yeah, it kind of had the writing on the wall there that they were looking for an exit strategy for themselves, it looked like.
Yeah, that, and just the tone also had changed a little bit. It was a little bit less friendly, and so we kind of we didn't know what they were necessarily thinking, but we were just like, this doesn't feel right. And so we started looking for a new group.
Which was probably a good call. I mean, fortunately, it was before any work had started. So, I mean, you never want to have to make that shift, but the timing, I guess, could have been worse.
Yeah, it was perfect timing. And so I took to the Bigger Pockets forum and looked for a property management company, and found one that was in the area. They had grown pretty quickly. The owners were young. They were ambitious. They had a lot of great ideas. And they were already managing, I think, 2,000 units in under 2 years.
Wow.
So, we went to lunch with them. They said that their niche was that, I'm sorry, not their niche. Their selling point was that they had in-house HVAC, electricians, plumbers, and GCs.
Okay.
And this was so that, not so much that they could do rehabs, but so that when tenants had problems, which are mainly in those areas, they can quickly get them taken care of and then charge them less than what they would have if they had to go and call somebody else.
Sure.
They made just a little bit of money on the service side is what they would say.
Gotcha.
But they also said they had a small team for a rehab. And they said that they could do it, no problem, in the time frame that we still wanted to get done with the budget that we wanted. So without doing any homework on our end of going through referrals, we said, yeah, let's do it. And that's where the first mistake was a little bit, is we didn't do our homework. And I think the company succeeds just fine in other areas. However, in our specific city, the quality of the employees they had, I think, was less, was more than subpar and less than what they had in other areas.
Right. And the rehab side might not have been their area of expertise. I mean, I guess it wasn't their top function, where they were mainly on the property management and service side of the business, it sounds like.
Exactly.
So on your budgeting, when you were working with them and your other contractor, did y'all have just a total budget that you had planned for it, and then you had details as to the work that you wanted completed and materials and that type, or was it actually broken down per area? How did that kind of shake out?
We went into the deal with a total budget based on the calculations we thought we could refinance out at.
Okay.
So based on buying it at 110 and the holding costs and everything, we wanted to put $45,000 into the entire property.
Okay.
So that was, that would have been $9,000 a unit, and it was 2 studios and 3 one beds. So in terms of like square footage, not very big spaces, but it was going to require redoing all the bathrooms and kitchens, which is where a lot of the expense comes.
Sure.
And so in hindsight, now that we've gone through this, I don't know why we were ever told we could get done close to what we wanted for the original $45,000.
Right.
As much as things did change after that falling out, they were probably right, based, with the estimation. And that's one thing in general people have to look out for is, one, contractors are going to try and underbid by saying they can get it done at a certain price, or say they can get done for less than what somebody else does. And you have to be aware and kind of expect that. And maybe when they're giving their estimate, just add in some contingency, knowing that it's going to be more.
I tell you what, that is a great point, because no matter what the budget is, or even on deals that you're contracting yourself and you're hiring subs and you've got it all priced out, there is always going to be a need for contingency. Something's going to come up, as you know. And so that's a great point.
Well, and through this process, I also came to understand the mentality of the people that we're working with. A lot of people that went into the trades didn't necessarily did it because they wanted to crawl through the bottom of a house where there might be rats and snakes to do someone's plumbing.
Right.
It just sounded like a better option than going to college. And some of these people didn't really like school. They didn't want to do homework. They didn't like caring about math and any of that stuff. And then got into a trade, realized how much money there was in it, realized they could make more if they went on their own, and kind of took on a business that requires them to do a bunch of stuff they didn't want to do originally.
Right.
So whether it's intentional or not, I think that dealing with tradespeople, you really have to look out for yourself and making sure that deadlines are going to be met, the math is going to be what it's supposed to be, and that the quality is going to be what you were paying for.
No, I think that's a great point. And that's, even if you have a general contractor that's running the whole show or a property manager on site, it really is touching that property on a regular basis and seeing what the status is and checking on the finish out work. Is the quality where you want it to be, and are they on time? And it's definitely, even if you have somebody that's running the job and they're supposed to be doing that, being on site periodically to make sure that those are getting hit is a key point. I agree with you completely.
Yeah. And so that was also another issue for us, is that we were 60 miles from our property. We went into the deal thinking we had a team, an experienced team.
Right.
And then we had to change that team up.
So Bob's outside. He's not in Harrisburg either. Bob's
no. And we had a third partner at the time that, but he kind of had to take a step back. Gotcha. None of us were close. I was the closest in being 60 miles out. And so I was there the most frequently because, the third partner also had worked for the same person. So my two partners were now unemployed and needed to figure out their jobs. And so what was going to be all three of us being able to work on this property a little bit, at least, none of us were experienced, but sure, we were going to learn, turned into just me. And so I was up there the most, just trying to expose brick and do the brick walls where we could.
Right.
So the little in-person interaction we had and things we caught onto was because I happened to be there. There were weeks with this new, so we went on to this new company and immediately they got started. But over time, it wasn't what we were sold. There were weeks where they only came in for a single day and we were already behind schedule on this thing. It turned out that the electricians they had could do basic electrical work. However, I'm not sure how this works everywhere, but it's something like there are licensed electricians that can pretty much allow someone that's not as experienced to do work on their behalf,
right?
With their guidance or something. And it turns out our property was not one that master electrician was willing to let someone else do work on. He's like, this is an old property. We got to get out knob and tube. We have to pretty much rewire the entire thing.
Sure.
I'm not going to let someone, use my name and not have me do the work. So it ended up being more expensive to do that. And we had to hire a whole new team. And, so there were a lot of things that didn't go the way they were supposed to there.
No. And you had mentioned that permitting was also an issue. What did you run into on that end?
So the general manager of the project, I'm told he was also considered a GC, but I never actually saw him do any work. And I know that he was more of a project manager going over several rehabs. Gotcha. And managing the work orders and stuff like that. Okay. So we met with him once we came over with this company, and he's like, we can get started on this right away. We had already gone through the eviction process. The house was empty. They could just immediately start gutting the place. We went with a team initially because we were new. We expected people to guide us. Right. And while I know the owner of this company was more than willing to do that, I don't know if that was really understood by the rest of their team. Okay. So, the general manager was like, I'm friends with everybody at Codes. I'll get these permits filed on Monday. I think it was like a Thursday or Friday when we met, or a Wednesday or something. He's like, I'll get these filed next week, but I can have guys out here tomorrow to just start doing stuff. I'm like, cool. Never thought about it again.
Right.
That was something that I didn't know I had to think further on it. And it wasn't until about probably 6 or 7 weeks later that we had a flooring company coming through to give an estimate. And I think our general manager knew this guy. And we were walking around when the general manager wasn't around, and the sales manager was like, "Hey, just so you guys know, I don't think permits are pulled for your property." I'm like, "Why would you think that?" He said, "Because there's nothing hanging in the window." And I don't know. I thought that a permit, like anything else, you put in a wallet or you put in a filing cabinet. Or I didn't know you had to hang that up. Nobody told me. I didn't think that I had to worry about that. And so it turns out that we had not had permits pulled. And I don't know if he'd forgot or what happened, but we're lucky that nobody from like inspections or codes or anything came sniffing around. But this did lead to another issue, in that we had hard money lenders.
Okay.
And these were hard money lenders from Philadelphia. They had never done anything in Harrisburg. They were taking a chance on 3 young entrepreneurs trying to get into real estate. And compared to Philadelphia, the loan was rather small.
Sure.
So they were willing to take this chance. And it was this same week that someone, that we found out that we didn't have permits pulled, that they were going to come look at the property. And so they arrived. We had asked in advance our general manager send us a list of everything that had been completed. And so we sent this list over to the hard money lenders in advance. They came through, and things on the list that were supposed to be done were not done. But the first thing they saw was no permit was hanging up. And for for a group in Philly, that's unheard of. You'd get caught first day if you were in a major market doing that.
Oh yeah.
So
because you have people out and about and they're driving, they see people doing work. They're just going to pull in and say, look at permits and confirm, or they can log in their truck and see if there's a permit pulled on a job. So.
Yeah. So they were immediately alarmed. We had no idea why. We were like, oh, it's like he's friends with the guys. It's fine. They're like, no, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's friends with them. You guys could get shut down. And so we just really had no idea how serious of a situation that was, or could be. So we walked through this property. There's still paint cans and spray paint and aerosols in the basement, hazardous materials. They were supposed to have cleared out the property of all debris. That wasn't the case. We could barely open a door to the 3rd floor without debris falling down. Or I'm sorry, we couldn't get up the steps without stepping in the debris. And these people were dressed nicely. They were pissed off. And we had also found out that on the 3rd floor there might have been a fire at one point. And while the repairs were done, there was still damaged wood, like charred wood that needed to be taken care of.
Sure.
So they were. We left the meeting thinking, oh man, this sucks. We really upset them. We didn't realize how pissed off they really were, because then the following Monday, we got a letter from their lawyer saying that we need to take care of this list of 20 things or they're going to foreclose on the property. And we're going into December, and so they did not practice Christianity, so they didn't care that Christmas was coming up and that everything was going to be shut down for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
They said, get this shit done or we're taking the property. We somehow managed to get everything we needed taken care of in probably like 10 days. Permits were good. We got everything. We got all the debris out. We got the hazardous material taken care of. Everything they wanted, we got to them. And still they then said right before Christmas, yeah, we still want out of this property, so go get some money and buy us out. So we then had to go find a new hard money lender that, in probably a week's time to come finalize, look at the property, decide that they were willing to invest in it, and then get us, money wired so we could wire to the old hard money lenders.
Wow, that definitely was a challenging Christmas season for you guys, and you you definitely figured it out and how to shift gears and make things happen to get that taken care of. Because if somebody wants their money in a week and you're in the middle of a project, that's not an easy task to accomplish.
Yeah, it was very unexpected. It was like a mom and pop that seemed very nice, which is why we went with them. And then they kind of pulled the rug out from under us because they were not happy with it. The thing is, they thought that we had defrauded them in some way.
Sure.
And looking back on it, part of it is because of communication. I don't think we notified them immediately when we went with a new property manager, GC. And all of that stuff. I didn't know why to think they would care.
Right.
The project was the same. Nothing was changing. It was just the people doing it.
Right.
We also didn't have an appreciation for how draw schedules work. And so I know that we bought the property, we had some money from the draw, and then we realized, oh wait, this is the biggest weekend for appliance sales in the entire year. So we went and preemptively bought some ranges, and there were a few other things we also purchased to take advantage of sales, which ate into the draw. And we didn't really consider that they cared.
Right.
How the money was spent. I know that draw schedules are there to have some sort of basis and to make sure you don't pay out a GC completely up front and then have them run off. But we didn't think they really cared how the money was spent as long as the money was the same at the end. And so one of the things that they wanted to know when they sent their demand letter is how the money had been spent so far. So we told them, and they saw that we had spent money that was not initially in the first draw. And so that's part of what went into them, pulling the rug out from under us, is thinking that we had been irresponsible with their money.
Okay. Let me ask you a question.
It was more that we were being fiscally responsible.
Right. No doubt. So their process actually was to give a draw for a certain items that were to be completed. Because I've worked with some other hard money lenders that their process is you do this work and then we pay you a draw after it's completed. So, okay. So theirs was that makes a little more sense. So they were giving you a draw to go do certain work ahead of time. You weren't having to pay out of pocket, and then they were reimbursing you with the draw. So that's how, okay. Now I kind of understand their process.
Yeah, it was 3 payments of $15,000 for a total budget of $45,000.
Okay. Gotcha. And then so the first one they gave out ahead of time, and then they came out to check the property before the second draw. Is that kind of how they would typically do it? Would be to come out and do a inspection of sorts prior to the following draw?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so then you shifted gears and found a new hard money lender and closed out the year and jumped back in to finish up your project.
Yeah, just we weren't quite finishing yet. It still took 7 months to finish everything at that point, and that was the company being understaffed, them not doing work for days or a week at a time.
Right.
Quality of work not being good and having to redo some things. The electrician that we had to hire couldn't get his stuff done when needed to be done because the company was moving slow on their end, and they'd either be in the middle of something when he came to do work, or they hadn't completed something that he needed done for him to do his work. And so it just created a lot of delays that, the general manager also just wasn't doing a good job handling and prioritizing it the way it was supposed to. And I understood that, he had a lot on his plate, but I'd say it was probably around April or May, 4 or 5 months after the new year, that the general manager ultimately quit because he was very stressed. He knew that he was being overworked and they were understaffed. And quite frankly, he didn't want to have the responsibility of this project, being his fault.
Right.
When he didn't have the resources necessary. And so with this company already being understaffed, they took an admin girl, a young woman that had never done, what didn't work in construction. Her job was to fill work orders, and they made her the general manager of this project remotely. She didn't even go to the place. And so at this point we had considered just finding a new company, but we were already so far behind schedule, so over budget that and having bad luck with people already. It's like, how do we find someone better? Like does it outweigh just finishing with what we know is going to be the case versus trying to vet another person and have to bring them up to speed on the project?
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense.
Because of how behind schedule we were, we finished one unit and then we said, all right, the property management company also had someone to show the units.
Oh, okay.
So we brought in a new person. Now I'm like, just show this first unit and get it rented. We need some money coming in. So someone came through and she offered to rent the entire building. And it turns out she has 3 nonprofits that help people with housing. And one of the nonprofits is kids that were originally in the foster care system, but are now adults. And so you can't be in the foster care system anymore, but there are programs set up to help those kids up to the age of 24.
Okay. So then transition
with housing.
to adulthood. So.
Yep. So she provided housing for these kids, and it's usually temporary. They're people that are trying to get on with their lives. We renovated these units to rent close to top of market value. But then this person came along saying she wanted to rent all of them for a little bit below market value. So we went with that idea. So they did get good quality units, but a lot of the people had a significant other and or also had a child. So 1 bedroom and studios weren't quite cutting it. So they were motivated to, come in and get on with their lives.
Gotcha.
So when that came about, we were like, oh, cool. This could be a break for us. We've got all 5 units rented. And so now the pressure was on the company to get each unit done one at a time so that we could quickly fill it with these people that needed housing. And so, we just powered through it, got 1 unit done at a time, and people moved in. Because the client was the only person paying, we didn't need to worry about collecting rent from 5 different people.
Sure.
In addition, because this is a nonprofit, they require sober living, for all of their nonprofits, and they have 1 person on the premises that is considered an RA.
Oh, okay.
And so they would cover the cost of minor maintenance. If a toilet paper, handle came off the wall, they would take care of that. They didn't really have much turnover issues because people were only living there a few months at a time. There wasn't carpet to replace or holes in the wall to really take care of. So they offered to take care of that. And so we were actually saving money, not having to pay a property manager,
Sure.
and just dealing with the 1 person. And she'd been doing this for a while. She had several properties of her own and then rented out several properties. And she had a network of people that when work needed to be done, she already had a ton of people that were willing to do it, knew what her cause was. So they were willing to do it for, less or they were the best quality. So there's some opportunities where it was, we had to pay, plenty, but we knew the work was good.
Right.
So she has effectively managed the property for about 2 years now. And, when she tells us something needs to be done, we just say, yeah, go for it. Tell us how much it's going to be. We don't ask many questions because, we know that it needs to get done. We know that she's honest.
Right.
And she doesn't come to us for small things. She comes to us when it's a big thing.
What were your major takeaways or some areas that you would change or things you learned throughout the process to do differently next time?
First and foremost, referrals. We should have done more homework on the company we were working on. And we thought we had done homework just seeing the size that they had grown to. I mean, it seemed a little bit obvious, but didn't consider that different areas of each company, the markets is going to dictate, the people that are working in that market.
Sure. No, that's a great
we should have asked for more referrals, and I don't know if we would have found out more. I don't know if at the time that we started with them, if there was much bad to say, or if it's in the time that we were working with them that people started getting burned.
Sure.
But any podcast you listen to, they're going to say the same thing, and just do it. Check referrals.
Yep.
Next thing is, what I said about the people you're working with. Try and be preemptive and understand the mindset of the person that you're working with. A lot of them are not like they weren't meant to. They didn't want to be business owners. They want to do their trade and make money.
Sure.
And accept, being a business owner just comes with a little bit of trade off for that more money. There's another part that happened with this property was we thought we were going to make more money on the refi than we actually did. Considering the amount of time that passed, the market had started to appreciate, and there wasn't a ton of multifamily. So the multifamily is actually better. We made more money after the 15 months had passed than we would have initially.
Sure.
But we started to get to a point where we thought we were going to be able to refi at about 300,000, which would have made us a lot of money. Our initial max was 245. And when we got the appraisal, we were surprised that came in at 235. And the reason for that is because we had this property manager, this tenant that was acting as property manager, we saved 8%. And on our pro forma, and because they were handling minor maintenance and turnover, that was, $150 a unit per year for each one. So
Sure.
300, there was all this stuff that we thought gave us a great pro forma. And then because it was a 5 units of commercial property, then when
Right.
the appraiser came through and, gave us the value based on the pro forma, he put those numbers back in. And so we're like, oh, this is an issue. Like you added these numbers lowering the value of our property. He said, no, if the bank were to take this over, these are going to be their numbers. And so we, I think, not to toot my own horn, but the three of us, the partners are, I think, pretty competent, smart people. And we tried to get too creative. We thought that our pro forma could be maneuvered a little bit.
Sure.
We thought that because we were trying to make top of the market rents, that we should go and do more than just a basic vanity. We went and got IKEA, these nifty looking, stylish vanities and mirrors and stuff like that. And it really just complicated things, because now the people that we hired to put the stuff together, they'd never done it. They didn't work with IKEA stuff, and IKEA directions, if you've ever had to do it, aren't always the most clear, and they're in Swedish. So by being too creative and trying to reinvent the wheel, we actually hurt ourselves in the long run. We paid more to have vanities put together than if we had just bought something simple from Lowe's and Home Depot. Getting too creative, it's fine to be creative. Find a way to make yourself stand out, but be aware of the trade-off. If you're choosing to have sinks that have materials, that can't easily be repaired, then it's just going to cost you more on plumbing issues in the future.
Right.
If you're paying people to put together furniture that they can't easily put together or is kind of cheap, you're one, going to pay more for that labor, and two, just going to have to repair it later or replace it all together, because the part, is going to take a month to get there and is going to be a third of the price of the total thing. So, I'm not saying everything needs to be bland, but just be aware of what trade-offs there are.
No, I think that's a great point. And I tell you what, you guys showed some huge perseverance to muscle through this project and get it done and get tenants in there. That's just, I tell you what, because a lot of people would have folded up shop and moved on, and y'all got it done and got the refinance done and have tenants in there for a couple of years. And that's great. So I think congratulations go out for that. And
Thank you. I'd say one more thing that plays into, our issues with the permit is don't be afraid to build a team around you. Make sure that they know that you're relying on them for expertise. And don't be, if you're going to pay them, feel free to ask as many questions as you want. There's no dumb question. I should have asked more questions. I should have asked, okay, can I get a copy of that permit? If I'd asked for a copy of the permit, I would have known that we had it.
Right.
I would have known what it looked like. And, it would have been hanging up if I had just asked for a copy of it.
No, that's a great point, because it would have said on there, make sure this is displayed on site.
Yeah. Would have seen that. Ask for copies of their insurance. Some people I know ask to be listed as an insurer on the contract, the contractor, whoever's insurance. Like, it's a very normal thing to do. But we didn't know that at the time. And we had I think that had things not gone awry with the employer, we would have had a good team and would have been fine with a lot of this stuff. But,
sure.
Things changed, and then we just found people that weren't super competent and should not have, they weren't the people that we should have been relying on.
Well, and I think that those are great points. And I think the key is asking questions. Unfortunately, when we start out, most of us don't know the right questions to ask. And so but that's why we're here. And that's why we do the show, because we want people to come out and tell the truth and tell the stories of their experiences. So, we can help our listeners avoid costly mistakes, learn from our experiences. And we sure do appreciate you taking time today to join us and tell your story. And we wish you the best of luck and look forward to keeping up with you and see what happens to you down the road.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to reach out, my email is just spensercarpenter91@gmail.com. My Instagram is just Spenser Carpenter. I'm far from an expert, but if you just want to ask some questions, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to hop on the phone and give any advice I can.
Wow. Are there a lot of cautionary tales in that interview?
Sure are. We sure do appreciate him sharing those with us so that we can all learn and have something to talk about.
Because I think that's what we're missing is we all hear about the wonderful success stories, and that's what makes everybody want to jump into real estate. And there are a lot more failures, I think, than successes. We want to help people avoid those failures.
Right. And as the owner of the project, and you're ultimately on the hook, whether it be in permitting or whether the job's completed on time, or if you meet your budget. So while you have people that you've hired as your team, it's ultimately your responsibility to go out there and to manage the project.
That's a great point, because that's what I heard him reference several times. First of all, he used the word business and people doing their work and running it like a business. I think we all need to remember this is a business. It's a business relationship with the lender, with your subs, with your general contractor. It's all a business relationship, and you have to treat it like a business. You can't just assume, like when he talked about the permitting and I know him in that office. It doesn't work that way. You have to take care of the paperwork. You have to take care of the business end.
And that's the hard part as a new investor. You don't know what all is required, and you don't know the steps that you have to go through to get from the beginning of the project to the end.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right. And he made great points about it. We should have asked more questions. And that is the key. The hard part is knowing what questions to ask and what details need to be followed up on.
And it sounds like he's got a great tenant in there now, and that's working great. And I'm happy for them. That I'm so glad that they made it to the other side. And it sounds like they have a steady stream of income. So that's wonderful. This is why we created the Think Like an Appraiser community, is for new investors and even seasoned investors have a place to go to ask questions and to get resources. And we have two things inside the community that I think would have been very helpful for Spenser.
I agree.
In the beginning. And the first one that came to mind was the loan application checklist that we have, which, whether you're using private money or hard money, it gives you 9 steps and research that you need to do before applying for that loan.
Right.
And
to
I think
ensure that you have all the information.
all of the due diligence done.
Right. And it doesn't just cover the items that the lender will require. It also covers getting with the city to ensure what permits are needed and what plans are needed. And so there's steps in here that will help you to avoid some of the stumbling blocks that new investors run into.
And then another thing that I think would have been beneficial is our renovation plan and budget form. They knew what they wanted to do, and I think they even had pictures of what they wanted to do, but I don't know that they had numbers attached to that. It kind of sounds like that the contractor just said, "Oh yeah, we can do it for that."
Right. They had an overall budget had.
Right.
And then they had a very detailed plan of what they wanted accomplished, but it wasn't broken out step by step and room by room.
And again, we know the safe way of doing this is to use your comparable sales information to determine what you're going to do in your renovation.
Right, because each market is different and each market requires different renovations to be completed to achieve the ARV for your financing.
And one thing we do need to mention, his 5 units makes this a commercial property.
Correct.
Which there was a commercial appraisal done.
Right.
Which is not our area of expertise.
From a single family residence up to 4 units is considered residential, where over 5 is considered a commercial, and it's evaluated differently. So comparable sales and income are both taken for a residential or for a commercial property. They're just weighted differently.
Well, I really enjoyed listening to Spenser's story, and it reminded me of a lot of things. So it's a good story to listen to, whether you're new to the business or whether you're a seasoned investor, because sometimes we forget or we take things for granted.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please do us a favor and subscribe or follow on the platform that you listen to your podcasts on. And also, if you would leave a review, we sure would appreciate that.
And if you find value in our content and you find the topic of real estate interesting, we'd love for you to join our Think Like an Appraiser community. You can go to thinklikeanappraiser.com and join there. Thanks a lot.
See you next time.